Good afternoon, Facebook and YouTube audience. This is Jennifer Noreen. I'm here with Gary Parker, the barbecue boss at Barbecue to You. Hi, Gary.
Hi. Hey, look, I'm in my summer stuff. You can't really
And
can't see that, but
showing
I'm
off
in
their
my
sweat,
t-shirt.
showing off the sweat.
Beautiful weather. You know what's great about weather this early is it's barbecue weather. That's right. Everybody's getting the barbecue bug. You
Yes,
know, they're
early.
starting to have visions of being in the park or by the water or up in the mountains, and of course you got to have barbecue for that because you're going to get hungry because you're going to be out. You're going to be doing stuff. And so
That's right.
spring is here and it's barbecue time.
That's right. So, does that T-shirt have a logo on it by
Yes,
chance?
it does. Whoop.
Nice.
There you go.
Perfect. And you can buy those at Barbecue to You. And there's a
Again, as
bunch.
soon as I get some more, I
Oh
have
no.
to,
Okay.
I have to change vendors.
Don't go quite yet then. So today we want to talk about the interesting journey that Gary's had from being a semiconductor tester, Intel techie guy. Hope I didn't butcher that too bad. To
Engineer.
engineer, running a restaurant. He's to running a restaurant in Gig Harbor, and specifically barbecue, which was a passion of his for a long time. And how did I think we've heard philosophically, well, it was my dream, and I wanted to bring barbecue to Gig Harbor. But what are the tactical parts of that? Because if you think about the difference between those two worlds, it's pretty vast, right? So, and you've done
Right.
very well. So, can you just give us some of the secrets of how did you make that transition from a business standpoint? And
Well,
yeah,
business, first of all, business is business, right? I ran pretty big high dollar programs right back in my tech world. So it's not like I'm not knowledgeable about accounting and budgets and these kinds of things, just fundamentally, right? Coming out of my background. And so I come in armed with that, but really, I think the story that you're really trying to talk about is how can you turn something that's a hobby, right, into
there
a
you go.
full blown business, and what does that journey look like,
Yep.
right? Because that's really what this is. We're a mom and pop restaurant, right? So um, we you know I was out there just doing this for fun. I mean, as I've told you guys before, um, we were moving up here to the Northwest out of Texas, right? These foods that I produce are staples um, to my way of life or how I grew up, right? And there's a lot of folks that are transplanted here, right? That are from the South as well because of the military bases and stuff that are around us, and so they're looking for it too and can't find it. So, we started this out as fun, right? Because this was something that when the kids were growing up, we were just doing this every weekend, right? And matter of fact, people joked about it all the time because it didn't really matter what season it was. You could always count on me being out there in the driveway with the pit going. And there was a time when um, we were doing, we were just doing it to do it. And my daughter's first husband, he was in the Air Force, and we got into this thing where we were inviting all the one stripers. I don't know if you know what a one striper is. They're the new guys in and they don't get a lot of money, and they either get to eat at the mess hall or they don't get to eat at all. Right? Is basically their life when they're first starting out. And so we used to sit there and invite, most of the people over in his from his wing, right? Come over, right? And so everybody started liking us. And then, these things. This is the organic side of it. Is when you make good food, right? And it doesn't really matter. I'm going to talk to you about barbecue, but this translates to the people who are doing catering, people who are doing Italian, people who are doing, this or that, whatever it is they do, and they love it, and they get up and do it every day, or every weekend, or every chance they can, right? And you're in the hobby mode, but people, right, find out about you, and then it's a natural progression. They go, hey, I'm going to have a party, and I don't really want to cook. Can you bring the pet over? Right? Or, hey, my husband's going to retire. We're going to be over here in the park at Silicone. Would you mind coming over and put on a big show for us? Because my husband loves this stuff. He watches it on TV all the time. And will you come, put on a show for us, right? There's these things that just people naturally gravitate to you once they find out who you are. What happens then is you start doing these things and they get bigger, right? And you kind of get on a high when you're first starting out because people are telling you, oh wow, I could never do that, or I could never do this, right? And but you do it so good. How do you do it, right? And so you get this energy in you, right? Because you're having fun and you're making people happy, and who doesn't like that, right? And then the things kind of progress, and but everybody knows you got a real job and you're just doing this on the weekends, right? And then as the kids grew up, we got out and started doing the stuff at the racetracks because my son was into auto racing, right? And so I was helping him build cars, and this is all the hobbyist aspect of it, and anybody that's a foodie, that loves to cook, right? They know what I'm talking about because whether it's dinner parties or barbecue or what have you, right? You get known as the guy. I know a guy, right? Or I know a girl, right? And oh, they make the wonderful cakes, or they make this, or they make that, right? And so sooner or later, if you keep doing that, somebody looks at you and goes, "You do so good, you need a restaurant," right? And you go, "Oh, that strokes my ego really well." But yeah, you don't do it because you know better, right? And you're kind of a little bit apprehensive, right? Because
Yeah.
now as you get into this thought process, you're starting to realize that, oh, that would be cool, and I could do this, and I could do that, and oh yeah, I don't want to really get up and do that every day. It's fun right now, right? And but eventually, if you're really good at it, and you start people that you trust, right? Start coming to you and say, man, you really need to do this, and da, 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 this doesn't exist in the town or what have you. And that was really our story. So, and it's a pretty scary thing when you take that step, okay? Because you start thinking about it, and I'm an engineer, right? So, I'm 47 steps ahead of everybody, right? Especially on an engineering project or something in planning, and and so you start thinking about how it would look, and well, if I did that, where would I put that restaurant, right? What, and you have no idea what you can afford because now you start to look around, you find a friend that's in real estate, and you go, well, what would that cost? What would that space over there cost, right? Oh, well, you learn all about things like triple net and price per square foot and how to calculate rents, off of that, and you go, ooh, that's scary. That's a lot of money, every day because these places, particularly like barbecue, where barbecue you is, those places aren't cheap, right? And why they're not cheap is because there's a synergy. The landlords and stuff that put those plazas together are very particular about where they are, how they look, what they do, and they're doing that because they're bringing traffic in. And it's like when we brought Mint Market into the plaza where we're at. That wasn't just him; that was all of us, right, around that plaza that had opinions on that, and the reason for that is because it's traffic flow, right? So the first thing you got to do, even though you know how to cook and you do this wonderful food, if you're going to try to do it, you got to stop and think a little bit about where's a good place, right? And you've experienced this with me, Jennifer, right? Because there was over COVID, right, when I was running the pizza joint in Bremerton, right? You would think that that's a wonderful spot to have a restaurant, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Right there by the ferry docks and all the things that it
Yard.
was, but it wasn't, right? Family, good old organic, family business, family little restaurant that didn't work. It didn't meet the needs or the wants of that particular demographic. So then you start to learn about this. So picking your spot, it takes a long time. If you really are thinking about it, because the other thing I want to say is there's these dreams you think you can just go put yourself anywhere, right? And it's a immediate success, right? We have a mutual friend to make that an example. They're in the middle of downtown Tacoma, right? And so that's really cool at lunchtime, Monday through Friday. Okay. But, what happens after happy hour, right? What happens on Saturday and Sunday when people are all out in the suburbs at parks and things like that? How does your business translate there, right?
Mhm.
And you got to think about that, right? Because that has a world of difference to go, to expand the idea, because you've got to interface with your community and be known in your community. So yeah, there are people like in downtown Tacoma that live in the apartment buildings down there, right? And they have particular ideas about what they want in that urban environment, right? Um, so location is very particular about how you do. So why am I where I'm at? Is because when we found that spot, and it wasn't very attractive, by the way, when we found it, right? It was an old Washington State liquor store, to give you the details on it, right? It was dilapidated, the roof was leaking, right? And so there was a lot of work that the landlord had to do just to put a roof back on it, right? And then there was the whole thing about taking everything out of it, because the liquor store had just left everything behind, right? And so we had to get rid of everything in there and turn it back into what they call a shell, right? Where it's really just walls, some doors, and this big flat piece of concrete, right?
Mhm.
And I'm telling you this lineage because then we can draw the understanding from the path, right? So what was the next thing we did? So first of all, then you get this lease in your hand, and you're scared to death of this lease, because it is if you've never read a lease before, there's a lot of legalese in that, and a lot of what ifs, and if this happens, this is your responsibility, and you're going, oh crap, I hadn't thought about all that, right? And landlords have rights too, right? And these things go on, and so you end up signing that lease. You got the place, and you get it into a square. Now, what do you want that square to look like? Okay, because
Yeah.
you talk about atmosphere a lot, right? And these, because I'm going to tell you these things because they're all the things that can break a business, right? It's
Well,
not.
the thing about your rent too, isn't that next to staffing about the largest expense?
No.
It's
No.
wow, because I think of that as being a pretty decent financial commitment, and you're making it over time. You can
What's a
fire
pretty
someone
decent
who doesn't.
commitment? It's not one of the top three, right? And I'll get into that too,
Oh,
right?
that's amazing. Okay. I happen to know
Yeah.
that number, and I'm like, wow. I mean, you can
Yeah.
fire someone that's rude to your customers. You can't move out of a lease where
You can
it's
move out
not
of a
working
lease.
for you. Yeah.
Yeah, finding a good landlord, right? That's not micromanaging you. Some of my peers talk about those scenarios as well, right? But to try to cut it up short, you're going in there, and to give you an idea of the fear factor that can grow into you, because all you want to do is cook, right? Because that's why you're trying to do this, and you're trying to get this out to the people and maybe make a buck. But most restaurateurs, anyway, they don't do it to get rich. They do it because they want their interpretation of a product to go to you, right, and let you enjoy it and have you a place to come get it. Um, but you start doing things like cutting up the slab in this person's building, right, and tearing walls out and doing this and building bathrooms, and there's all this stuff that you do. And
Yeah.
oh yeah, in all this, what do you want your kitchen to look like? Right. So you hadn't even got down the road very far yet. And you're already doing these. You get one shot at getting it right, and you have no information, no data about how to do this stuff, right? And how to design this kitchen for workflow efficiencies and these kinds of things, right? You got all these contractors running around asking you questions, and then all this time you're going. By this time in the process, you're going, why did I do this? I was having such a good time in my driveway, right? But I got to go forward because there's no turning back, right? You sign that lease, and you got a minimum of 5 years. And in our case, we go for 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it goes on. You eventually get it all put together, and now you're really nervous because now you're going, because everybody's been walking by watching you, and they have all figured out it's going to be a restaurant. Oh, we have a new restaurant in town. Oh, joy, right? And we're going to try that place out.
Yeah.
And so you finally put the sign up that says, okay, we're going to do a soft open, because and soft open is a code word for come and eat our food. We have no idea what we're doing, right? That's what soft open means, right? And I remember on February 27th, 7 years ago when we did that. I mean, that line was hanging out the door. We were trying to figure out, we got about 50 customers into it, and we started running out of food. And how do you resupply the counter and all this kind of stuff? All the things I had thought through, yeah, none of them worked. Right.
So you're
And
immediately scaling this small version. You got a small version of this restaurant in your driveway. So you had an
yeah,
idea of the food, an idea of the location, an
yeah,
idea of the process, maybe sort of how many people you needed to help you, but you really
yeah.
didn't know. Talk about a scale story, right? So, I mean, you're taking this microcosm of a business and scaling
Right.
it out to sitting on a busy suburb, parking lot corner. And can I
That's the
do this?
right word. You're scaling, right?
Oh my
And
God, it's like a
and all
scale
your,
experiment.
because you're
Yeah,
scaling because everything I was doing in the driveway was just me, right? I didn't have to tell
right,
people what to do. I didn't have to
right,
rely on other people to do
right,
stuff, right?
right.
And so you're figuring all this stuff out, right? And
Yeah.
again, it doesn't matter what food product it is. To bring the story up, you eventually, you have all these new employees, and they kind of watch and they work with you, and they figure out what they're going to do, right? And they start working with each other, and they figure out what works and doesn't work. And next thing you know, you take a deep breath, you look up one day, you take a deep breath, and you look back and go, wow, it's all working, right? I'm literally standing here. I got a lobby full of customers. I got people in line, and that's all good, right? Supplies are coming in the back door. Um, the dishwasher works. The health department's happy, and you kind of kick back and go, wow, I freaking built it, right?
Mhm.
Now I got to make it last, right?
Scaled.
Uh,
You
right.
scaled.
Because now there's this other thing that goes on is because after you've done it for a little while and people are liking you, right? Um, they expect the exact same thing every time they come in there. Okay, this is another factor that wasn't in the fun zone back when we first started, right? Is because when I was working out of the driveway or running around doing these little things, if it was a little different today than it was yesterday, it really didn't matter because I probably won't see them people again for a year or something, right? And so,
Mhm.
what do you do? When you're doing brick and mortar, right? They're coming in and they want that brisket to taste exactly the same way it did last time because they loved it the last time.
Yep.
They want to love it again. And if it's not the same thing, then they look at you and go, "What's wrong with you?"
Right.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
And in barbecue's case, we had another layer to that, which was, "What do you mean you run out? Just go back there and cook some." Right? Well, barbecue is a 12 to 15-hour process, right? So it takes all day to prep tomorrow's food, right? And so we
Yeah.
make what we make. And that was the whole reason why barbecue joints run out, right? Is because we make what we make and then that's it. Um, so now you get all that. The whole point was you're going to get all that up and running. And this is where some of the other stuff starts to kick in because you get comfortable with it after a little while. You get confidence. You realize you're not going to be one of those that crash and burn in a week, right? And that's good. And these are all real fears, okay, that go through you. So now it starts to become supply chain, right? Cook process.
Hmm.
Um, what is your process? Portion control is a really big one because you're depending on other people to serve, right? And so some
Hmm.
people have an idea of what when they say, "Well, give me a little," and I have a joke that I use with our customers. I'm going, "All right, is that going to be a Washington little or is that going to be a Texas little?" Right? Because I'm from Texas, and so a little is a lot, And so, what is your little, right? When you say, "I just want some,"
Right.
um, right? And so then you start figuring those things out, and that's where you start to interface with the community, right? And so you're running around all the time with your hair on fire, cut off at this range, and then you have to stop what you're doing. I don't care how busy you are. You got to stop what you're doing because when a customer walks up to you and says, "Oh, you're from Austin. I'm from Austin," da da da, and they want to talk for 10 minutes, and you got to have a love for that. Okay, I mean, you do, and I do thoroughly enjoy it. Unfortunately, I don't get to stay with them very long, but I always try to stop and engage with them because they are my customers, right? I want you to know that I love you, right? That I want you to come in and eat my food. I'm doing it for you, right? And And so, yeah, I mean, somebody could be, the building could be on fire, but if somebody wants to sit and talk for a minute, well, okay, right?
Yeah.
Customer's the most important thing, right? And all customers always the most important thing, right? That's another learning that comes in, um, when you that I don't have that problem when I'm out freelancing, right? Because I'll
Mhm.
never see the person again, right? So they liked it or they didn't, and you move on. But no, when you're in a restaurant, right? Everybody that walks in there, you want to see them multiple times. You want this to become their go-to place, right?
Mhm.
And so things like atmosphere come in real big, right? You're interfacing with your public. And by the way, you don't do things right every day, and you screw things up, and people get upset about it, and you can't ignore that either. You need, one of our policy here at Barbecue to You, if some, and I just had one the other day where things weren't exactly right, and so I've just got a policy that I just completely replace it. You know, there's no questions about it. It's irrelevant what I think or what one of my guys think is you didn't like it, and so that's all I care about. I
Right.
quit. I go to solution space right as soon as I hear that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a part of the business. You have to put that culture into your employees and everything, right? And you see that a lot at barbecue. A lot of people talk to me about that. They go, "Your guys are so nice," right? And that's because we've taught that, we've embedded it into their thinking about how you work.
Mhm.
People we want because we want. So now we're up leveling again, because the philosophy in it all is we want our customers to come in and be in an environment where, yeah, they know their problems are outside the door, but while they're inside the door, right, um, we don't want you thinking about that, right? The whole idea is to give you good, wholesome food, put a smile on your face, let you get a breath and kick back for a second, right? And then when you get rested, you can go back outside the door and go deal with your day, right? But when you're in my spot, I want you to feel good, and I want you to relax. And so you notice the boys at the counter, they'll ask you, "How's your day? How's your day going today? Could we care about how your day's going today?" And they all have their particular funnies that they'll say, or to try to get you laughing and enjoy it. And they try to, they understand the power of the show. Like when we're cutting brisket and doing all this kind of stuff. And so yeah, we put on a show,
Mhm.
and you do this over and over and over again. And in our case, 7 days a week, right? And you see the same people every day, and you're building that rapport. You're building a rapport with your community, is what you're doing. Um, and so, like in our world, I'm real. Everybody knows. We've talked about it here. I'm real big into community give back. Right. Not
Mhm.
only do I want to interface in the store, I want to interface outside. I want barbecue to be known, right, in this community, for all the things it does, right? And that's very important too, right? This was another big learning, right? Is because people walking in the store are very sensitive. They know they're spending their money, right? And the one thing that, particularly in communities like Gig Harbor, um, they know that if they come in to barbecue you today, right, and they're gonna pay. It costs a lot to buy barbecue, but they also know that a portion of what they just paid is going to end up out in a school. It's going to end up paying for Santa Claus downtown. It's going to end up, providing a shuttle bus so you can park in a parking lot and go down to the farmers market. It's going to be, it's going to show up at the school band boosters or the key club or you've been here with me long enough, Jennifer, to know we probably got 200 different entities, right, that we support, right?
So did that value come with you out of corporate or is that giving back value something that is a
No,
personality
no,
trait?
corporate's dry, right? This has to be something that, and because before I was an engineer, when I was younger, I worked in retail a lot, right? So I understood what it meant to be, in customer service, right? But then the natural aspects of Gary Parker, right, are that of empathy, right, and care, right? So I love neighbors. I come from Texas, right? We're the friendliest bunch of people on this planet, right? We don't, and I take people down to Texas sometimes and they go, you don't lock your doors, right? Or anything, right? And nope,
Yeah.
nope. And yep, the neighbor, and they'll be with me and the neighbor will walk in. And not only will the neighbor walk in, the neighbor will walk in, they'll go to the kitchen, they'll open the refrigerator, they'll grab a chicken leg or a beer or something like that.
Exactly.
And they'll say hi and for a few minutes and they'll split. And the people from the north that I take down there, they see that kind of thing happen, right? They're
Mhm.
going, who was that? And what the hell just happened, right? I said, oh, it's just the neighbor. I'm not worried about it, right? And I do the same thing over at his house, and that's because we're born, when you're out in the farm and ranch land area, we're a community, right? And we all know each other,
Mhm.
right? And we learn each other, and we deal with problems together, and we deal with happy times together.
Mhm.
And that's a part of me, and that's what I wanted to try. That's what I tried to bring into Gig Harbor. You don't have to be so. Maybe you got a better word for it, but staunch, right? And it's because so many of the hospitality industry and that I encounter, it's like, okay, what are you here for? All right, here it is. Are you ready to leave yet? Right? And we try to be the opposite of that.
Yeah, my experience in Texas was you called your neighbors and your close friends first, and if you truly couldn't solve it, then maybe you called the cops.
Yeah.
And if the
Yeah,
cops showed up before you got through that network, it was like none of your business. Like we got this. This is my cow, And I loved that. And it's like a community dependency instead of independent. Everybody's raising families and trying to feed, and it has a lot of the same problems, right? And so it is that dependency as opposed to
it is.
so we're in this together sort of thing.
Right. So now let's come back to your founding question, right? How did you go do all this stuff? Well, these are all the things that, if you're truly a foodie, right, and you're trying, if you really have a passion, and you really want to get your stuff out, right, these are the things you're going to go through, and what gives you the answer is your inherent abilities, right? These things that are embedded in you, right? The tenacity that you have to see beyond the scary thing that you're working on right now because you're taking a risk. And maybe that's one thing I did pick up out of the tech world. I was very accustomed, all right, to taking
It's a
two or
high
three
risk.
million dollar $2 or $3 million risks at a time,
Yep.
right? And knowing very well that I was going to get pummeled if I made the wrong decision. um, so I spent 30, 40 years of that, right, of that kind of environment. So I had an inherent ability to just, see past the moment, right, and say, I'm after this end game. This is where I'm going to go. And the problem that I'm worried about right now is just the problem of the moment. Next week, I won't even remember I had this problem, and you just go, right? And you got to have a little bit of tenacity, right, to open a business, especially when you're building one from scratch, right? And so, and that's the way it is. That's what. And if any foodies are out there that hear this, have tenacity, have confidence in yourself, right? That you're going to be able to solve whatever comes at you, right? Because you're not going to know it all, right? The way that it forms is you build it build it through time. And I could make the same examples out of working with the state, right? This state is a constant fluid of change that goes on around your business. The state is one of the most regulated states and one of the highest tax states there is in the union. Okay, and that stuff is always blowing up your budget, right? You probably saw the interview that I was doing on the news the other day about this current legislature, right? So Gary, you're a barbecue guy. Why are you playing with the legislature? Well, it's because I'm doing is I'm getting ahead of the new expenses that are going to hit me, right, in 2027.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it's all about. Because fundamentally, when it comes to budgeting, the hospitality budget is super simple. Okay, you're going to bring in a raw product, and that raw product costs X, right? You're then going to have an expense to do the value add, build in the opportunity cost, right? That's your value add. If you're cooking a steak, if you're cooking corn on the cob, or if you're cooking spaghetti, right? It costs you something to bring that raw material in, right? It costs you something to cook it, right? And it's costing you money every minute to hold it while you wait for somebody to walk through the door, right? All
Mhm.
those things are an expense, okay? And when you have that, and then you have to be able to sell it more for more than all that cost, okay? It's simple accounting, and you can't spend what and you got to be really disciplined. Number one point for new restaurants is um, they invest even though they're losing, right? And because they're going to think, well, over time it'll come back, and that's a pretty risky thing, right? You have to be disciplined from day one on budgets, right? I
Mhm.
have this, and if I do my job right, then I'll have this plus this much more back, and
Mhm.
then you again, and it's a stair step. You build up, right? And then and when you build up a little bit and you got a little bit of extra, then the next thing that goes into your brain is, okay, what can I add, right, to augment this place and make it better? Do I do another menu item? Do I hire another employee? Do I provide another service? Right? I'm a restaurant now. Am I going to cater? Right? Right?
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
becomes right.
Yeah,
Am I going to
one thing that's occurring to me as I hear you tell this story is that, a large brand has to do everything that you do, all the hard work. They have to manage their budget, they have to manage their flow of, resources and food and all the things. They have to manage their people and the taxes and all that. But they have this huge brand that they're dependent on, like McDonald's or Red Robin or whatever, and it's recognizable in the community, and people know what a chicken sandwich tastes like at Red Robin. But you're doing all that same work, but you have to tell stories and involve yourself
right?
in the community and tell those stories, and on top of that, because you have to build a personality, you're building a brand with the stories and the activities and the values that you have, plus
Right.
you're doing all the work. So I think you have to set the expectation with someone that wants to do this, that you're going to do all the same work that you see a large scale restaurant owner do,
You do.
or manager do,
Yeah.
plus you're going to create who you are in the community. And I think
Mhm.
that's where Gary has succeeded well, because he is very comfortable being out in the community. I talk to other clients who are restaurant owners, and they're not as much of a community person as Gary, and I get concerned because I think,
All right.
well, you might want to go manage a restaurant for the lobster shop or something, because you
Yeah.
have to be out at the chambers and the schools and looking for ways to get back. And so
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's just a stark difference in your story versus, just going to work for someone and being their chef or whatever. So
But if you do the work, with these stories we tell you, if you do the work,
yeah.
that hobby that you started with
Hmm.
really becomes a very
Yep.
fulfilling thing, because now instead of having taking care of 10 people at a time, we take care of 1,000 people a week, right? And I have metrics that how many dinners for your family, your particular family, were barbecue that week, right? Is it one? Is it two? Is it three? Right?
Right.
How many times did you come to the store that week? Or am I becoming a staple for you? Right? Your go-to,
Yeah.
right? Because if I'm a busy parent, both parents are working, and they have two jobs, and they got a couple kids and a couple three kids, and they're going to have their friends over too, and the daily routine and rat race. We've all been parents, right? And somebody calls the other one and says, "Hey, can you stop and pick up dinner?" Right? Your brain's going through that whole cycle and saying, am I going to do a hamburger? Or am I going to do pizza? Am I going to go down and get Italian? And oh God, I've eaten it 4 times. I'm so tired of it. Oh, let's go get this barbecue, because it's this outlier, right? This thing that's different, and you can actually market into that too, right?
Yeah,
So
and I think it's a meat and vegetable too. I mean, it's a meal that is fills your tummy kind of meal. I think that appeals to moms. I know it does me. It wasn't just like, grabbing McDonald's or the local garbage junk food. It was like, oh, I'm going to put some legitimate, good quality protein in my kid's stomach. And we a lot appeal to your customers and your prospective customers with that message of, we already cooked dinner. We've got
yeah,
you. And for what it would cost to go to the store and cook and the time and all that, we've been
right.
cooking this all day and it's hot and fresh. So why don't you just come by and get it? So,
Just come
and
back.
honestly, that has gotten inside the heads of people, and it works. They relate to that message. I know moms and dads both do. So it works. And I
Another,
think, you used the word pedestrian one day, a while back. And I think you can claim pedestrian. I think, and not in a boring way, but I think you can claim that that barbecue to you in Gig Harbor has become, and even for some Tacoma people, has become a normal thing. I think
Yeah.
you're their Saturday night beer and brisket, and
Yeah.
like it or not, they're around for a while. So
And that's
it's
called
exciting.
building a brand, right? That's building
What's
a
that?
brand. That's called building a brand.
Yes.
But the
And
measurement, the building of the brand as measured by, right?
yeah.
That's an engineering term, as measured by, is how many times a week can I feed a family, right? And this is another important thing I'll tell the foodies, right? Is my food, the barbecue in general, right? It's a food that people can come in and buy, right? And they know, right, that they don't have to eat it all right then. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Because that it'll even get better in the refrigerator the next day. All right. So you need to position your product, okay, such that it's very sustainable. Okay. Because they can come in and have a nice dinner, then they can make a sandwich to take to work with them the next day, just out of the one portion. So in people's minds, so you engineer your product so that um, people can see a clear path to, yeah, I'm going to spend $50 on this, but I'm going to eat twice. So it's really,
Yeah.
it's really
It's a solid
economical.
protein. It's a well-made meat dish. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And that is a unique, what we call in the marketing world, is a differentiator to your product. Because you don't go to Burger King and plan on having Burger King for lunch the next day or putting it in your kid's lunchbox. But you might throw brisket on a salad the next dinner, right? So, yeah.
Right. And then you can also position it as a cooking ingredient, right? That's the other thing that we do here at Barbecue to You, right? Is we can also repackage what we sell, and because Aunt Mary wants to, she wants to make a special salad, but she loves it with the brisket in it, right? And so they'll come and get 3-4 pounds of brisket, and they're going to go home and go make something out of that, or the chicken's really popular for that.
Yep, I'm sure it is.
So when you're doing these restaurants, you can also think about what are adjacencies to your primary path, right? That you can facilitate and market, and these are the things that continue to build that brand as well.
Yeah, and I think I know we need to wrap up here, but one of the things that comes to mind for me is that you have a certain capacity, and I think you have to expect limitations and capacity. I mean, how many times have you and I or others, and you talked about the other ideas? Oh, you should be doing this. Why aren't you selling more swag, or why aren't you selling online, or why don't you have your sauce in Costco? And and you're really good at maybe or no, my focus is this. I'm going to do these 3 things really well. I'm the best in town at this. I would say you're the best at brisket, if not in Pierce County. I don't know, some people say state. It's crazy. And I think that came from that discipline of saying no to a lot of things that maybe other restaurant owners would have gone after. So I've admired you for that, your focus and your tenacity towards doing these certain things really, really well. And I think,
staying in your lane.
What's that?
It's called staying in your lane.
Right? Yes. Yep. It's philanthropy. It's quality of food. It's how you treat people. Your brand's personality is very people first, and also food quality first. I don't think it's just that friendly, average food thing.
It all starts with a good product, right? The reason that people told you to go open a brick and mortar is because you had a good product. Don't screw that up.
Oh, right. Exactly.
But
you can't get away from that.
Build a sphere around it, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's a restaurant in Tacoma that used to have an amazing reputation for both atmosphere and people and food. And I was talking to another restaurant owner yesterday, and she said, their food's not really there anymore. And so there's only so many more times you're going to go back to a restaurant with a friendly waiter for average food. So I think you're right. You have to keep your food, the quality of it up front. But well, thank you. This has been a good conversation. I took some fun notes, and this would be a great thing to put in your social media, just all the different things. You talked about, if I go back, you picked your location, you had a soft open, you had to create a predictable product that, it's not like being in your driveway. It had to taste and the portions had to be consistent. Being kind to people and the energy that it takes to greet people every day. And I apologize. I send people to go talk to you all the time. Consistent atmosphere, creating a customer first policy and approach, and how you have to spread that cause into your employees and everybody that talks to your customers. You're giving back and you're taking risks, dealing with the practicalities of a budget and scaling and state regulations and all of that. So I think that would make a great, I think you should again, Gary, there's these books you should write. But I think you said a lot about each of those things, and I'll be happy to put it up on your Facebook so people can grab it.
And I invite anybody that sees this, if you're thinking about even the closest idea of having a restaurant, come see me.
Yeah,
we can sit over, we can have some brisket and drink a beer, and I'll tell you in much more detail than I covered here about what it's like. I'm always happy to help people find a way to go do this stuff, because to be frank with you, the hospitality industry has been so beat up over the last 5 years. We need more people in the business.
Yep.
Right.
That are good people.
I can tell you at least 6 ideas I have right now for restaurants for Gig Harbor. Right, where people are asking for a dish and they cannot find it anywhere, and not only can they not find it anywhere, they can't find it on the peninsula anywhere, right? Yep. And so there's so much world of opportunity, and we've been beat up so hard from COVID and these kinds of things, and we've never recovered for that, right? And but I can tell you, if you really do good product and you give customer service, right? The economy may be hard, but they will come see you and they will take care of you in a community.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And we've watched you do that. So thanks, Gary. We'll talk again next month. We'll have to come up with what else we should share. I think there's some topics here we could dig deeper on even more. So always good to see you. And we'll be talking to you again. Thanks.
Okay. See you soon. Bye, everybody.